Back again with another. Today we're going to be discussing how to do a two all over into a comb over or pompadour with a natural part. Just like every other haircut, I will be applying water lightly to the hair and combing through to look for any abrasions and to also see which way the hair flows. You want to make sure that you really pay close attention when combing in the area of the comb over part, thus to not leave too much hair on or to not cut too much off when doing the haircut. I will be doing this haircut tutorial today using the Wahl magic lens. First, starting off with the Wahl 2-guard, and always remember to oil your clippers before each haircut to get a smoother and even cut. And I do have the lever completely closed for this 2-guard. Couple things to remember while doing a haircut. Some may be always to keep the clippers flat to the head. Another is, as you can see, I always use both of my hands. Whatever hand that I don't have the clippers in, I tend to use to stretch the skin and to keep the hair out the way that's not to be cut. When I make it to the side of the hair where it lays over at, I sometimes make a guideline on that side just because I like to make my comb overs have somewhat of a faded look to them instead of having a completely blunt line. Next, I will be switching over to a higher guard and using what's called a fading down technique. I will be starting with a 5-guard clipper all the way closed. As you can see, I'm keeping the clipper flat to the head and flicking out. So it's kind of like I'm letting the hair just fall into the clipper and into the blade instead of me going roughly into the hair and creating a new guideline. You will also see a lot with me turning the clippers to the side and trying to go completely opposite against the grain of which way the hair flows. Next, I will be switching over to my 4-guard and going right under where I just completed using the 5-guard, but making sure that I don't go no farther up than it to create any new lines. And I will be using the lever going opening and closing it. Opening and closing the clipper, meaning that the longer you want the hair, you open the clipper. The shorter you want it, you're going to close it. As you're opening and closing the clipper and changing guards, you will slowly but surely start to see the fade come together. Now I will be switching over to the 3-guard and using the same technique that I just used, remembering to open and closing it and to not go up farther than I just used that 4-guard. If you're having troubles blending and it's just not turning out completely how you think it should, you can also turn the clippers and use the edge of the blade to lighten it up in those darker areas. Switching back to my 2-guard and finishing up this side of the fade, opening and closing my guard, but also remembering to not go up too far, so I don't want to create a whole new line and have to refade it back over again. Wanted me to trim down his beard to a 1.5, so I will be using a 1.5 guard fully closed against the grain on his beard, and also tapering it in to his hair, so I'm slightly using it in his taper area, that 1.5, even though he has a 2 around his hair, just to not make it look so blunt and for it to blend in and look nice. Now that I feel like the fade part is complete, I will be using a spritz or any kind of holding spray all around his hairline just to keep it intact when I get ready to use the liners on it. The client did request that I trim the top of his hair, so while the holding spray is still drying, I will be lightly spraying water on top and I will start combing it out. Make sure when using scissors to work on the top that you really go over it with the client of what desired look they want, because sometimes they might tell you they want an inch or 2 off, but in reality they only want like a centimeter or 2 off. The first step to cutting the top, I will comb it all the way out and cut off his overhang area. In this part you want to be careful not to cut off too much of the overhang or not to cut in to the part that you have faded. Once I have complete the desired look that I want with this overhang area, I can then focus on cutting the length of the hair and the bulkiness out. I start my first guideline in the front of his hair, and I kind of angle the hair in the way that it flows to the back and into the side at the same time. After that first initial guideline, I keep using that to go throughout the whole top of the head until I get the desired look that I want. Once I feel like the top of the hair is complete and cut the right way, I will comb it all the way out and get a good glimpse of it to see if it's the way I want it. Sometimes you will notice spots that you might have to go back in through in detail. A lot of the haircuts are about detail work. Right here I'm using a quick clip it over comb technique just to take some bulkiness out of the front of his hairline before I use the liners on it. I will be using the Wahl detailers to do all the line work. First, I want to start in the middle of his hairline and make sure that his head is completely squared up. When I line a client, I like to use either my middle finger or my ring finger as a placement finger, just so I'm not sliding around or the liners won't be shaking. And as you can see, I just lightly tap the liners in and let the liners do all the work and try not to press hard into the skin. Sometimes you have to use clipper over comb, again on that hairline to lighten it up in the bulky areas. When you get to an area that you have to bend, like whether it's a C-cup or a design, you want to remember to keep the clippers flat, but also use the edge of that clipper kind of like it's a pencil. You want to try to tap more than you try to drag the clipper. You'll notice when I do the back of the beard line that I don't just completely drop straight down with that line. I like to try to keep it natural. I like to keep the line natural so it won't go out as fast and so it will last longer. When I get to go around the ear part, I use the middle finger or that ring finger, again as a placement finger to keep the ear folded down, or sometimes you might use your opposite hand. Once I line around the ear, kind of like I trace the ear, then it's time to drop the clippers flat and line the neck area. Again, I'm keeping the clippers flat to the head, using one of my fingers as a placement finger, and as you can slightly see, I'm using my opposite hand to stretch the skin to help. Lining his mustache area, I'm just going to trace right above his lip to line the bottom part of it, and then when you get to the top part, kind of do the same thing, follow that same line, but not go too far in. to the hairline. I'm starting in the middle again and just working my way over one step at a time. Using clipper over comb to take out some of that bulk out of the hairline, and then keeping my clippers flat to the head and using the edge of the liners when using it in a bending area. Then I just completely do the same steps that I did on the opposite side of the head, kind of like keeping it parallel. Slow down this next part so you can get a better look at why the liners are working so good. But sometimes it's just not the liners, it's all about the technique. Again, I'm keeping the clippers flat to the head and also stretching the skin with my opposite hand and pulling away and only using the edge of those liners and letting the liners do all the work. Before I line the back of his head, I will be taking the 1.5 guard and kind of taking out some of the bulkiness or the high and low areas of the haircut. This will help with getting a cleaner line. Lining the back of their neck, you want to try to get them to keep their head as straight as possible or as normal as possible. I start in the middle of the head and work my way over, just like lining the front of the hairline. You must also remember that everything is not always going to be perfect, so it's kind of like you gotta finesse it in there, just like the front of somebody's hairline, until it looks completely right. lining the bottom of his beard, you kind of want to use the same steps you used with lining the front of the hairline and lining the back of the neck. But I'm also going to be draping him back so he can be a little bit more comfortable with lining it. After I tapped the first line across the bottom of his beard, I will then go against the grain with the liners to clean up all the excess hair, but as I'm doing it, I'm stretching the skin. Once I have finished that, I will be moving on to the razor. I want to first make sure that I dust off all excess extra hair so it won't get in the way or stick to the client when after shaving. Sometimes clean up areas that I think will need to be cleaned up with the liner that I think is too much to go in and just use the razor blade only. Today I will be using Master Combs Blue Menthol Shaving Gel. I completely cover the area which I am going to be shaving with the gel. I use a comb or brush right before I apply the razor just to get any excess gel out the way. I will be shaving him today using Darco double-sided blades and using a Tune 45 razor holder with it exposed. Everywhere where I use that razor at, I want to make sure that I'm stretching the skin in the opposite way and keeping that razor flat to the skin, just like I'm using the clippers. I want to remember that you're not always going to get the crispiest line off the first stroke from the razor, and that you will have to go over it sometimes to get that crispiness that you want. When shaving the top of the lip, sometimes I ask my client to tuck his lip or pull it down to help glide the blade a little bit easier. And as you can see, I'm still stretching and pulling the skin as I'm gliding with the razor. When using a shave gel or shaving, you want to make sure you keep a towel close to wipe all the excess hair or shave gel out the way. As I'm shaving, you kind of want to remember that wherever the beard starts at, which is probably going to be at the edge of his mustache, to where it ends at, which is probably going to be either his temple area or at the edge of his arch, that it's a C shape. So as I'm going through and I'm stretching the skin, keeping the razor flat, one step at a time, I want to also remember that I'm trying to create somewhat of a C shape. sometimes you can use the razor on the back of the beard line to give it a little bit more crispiness. Again, when I make it to the other side of the head, I want to do the same exact steps that I did to the other side, just like I'm keeping it parallel. I will be using the razor to complete the rest of this haircut. You will notice that I keep the skin stretched in the opposite way that I'm using it, and also keeping the blade flat to the surface of the hair. Once I feel like the line is complete with the razor, I will go back and do what's called detailing. Once the haircut is complete and you're finished with the razor, you can go back and hit the top of the hair with a holding spray, and then comb the hair in the desired look that you would like for him to wear. Here's a picture of the finished product. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to follow the Instagram accounts. And don't forget to check out the Claremont Barber Club website for all our latest and newest gear. Thank you.